On April 2nd, we commemorate Venerable Titus, the Wonderworker, the Martyrs Amphianus and Edesius of Lycia, the Martyr Polycarp of Alexandria, and St. George Matskevereli of Georgia. St. Titus, the Wonderworker, displayed zeal for the monastic life from his youth. He pursued asceticism in the 9th century at the Studian monastery near Constantinople. By his deeds of fasting, purity of life, and mild disposition, St. Titus gained the love of the brethren, and at their request he was ordained priest. Fervent of faith, the saint stood up for the orthodox veneration of icons during the iconoclast persecution. Because of his virtuous life, God granted him the gift of wonderworking. The saint was translated to the Lord in his old age. The holy martyrs Amphianus, or Amphianus, and Edesius, or Edesius, were brothers. They lived in the city of Patara, in the province of Lycia, in the family of the pagan governor. They went to the city of Beirut to study the pagan sciences. There they became ardent followers of Christ. The holy brothers left their pagan parents and went to Alexandria and Caesarea, where they found an instructor, St. Pamphilius, commemorated on February 16th, and under his guidance they became accomplished in the spiritual life, spending their time in prayer and the study of sacred books. By decree of the Emperor Maximian, 305-313, a zealous pagan and cruel persecutor of Christians, all the inhabitants of Caesarea were required to offer public sacrifice. Many Christians, including Saints Amphianus and Edesius, had to hide in order to avoid sacrificing to idols. When the city prefect of Caesarea was about to offer sacrifice to idols, St. Amphianus boldly went to the temple, took the prefect's hand, and urged him to abandon his error and believe in Christ. By order of the governor, soldiers seized St. Amphianus, fiercely beat him, and then threw him in prison. 2 days later they led him to trial, where they beat him with iron rods and burned his body with bundles of flax soaked in oil. The brave youth, steadfastly confessing his faith in Christ, was then thrown into the sea with a stone about his neck. Suddenly a storm arose, and the waves carried the martyr's body to shore, where it was buried by Christians. After a while they freed St. Edesius and sent him to Alexandria. There he boldly denounced the governor Hierocles for his extreme cruelty towards Christians. St. Edesius was tortured and then drowned. The holy martyr Polycarp suffered for his bold denunciation of the Emperor Maximian, 305-313, for spilling innocent Christian blood in the city of Alexandria. He openly confessed himself a Christian and went to voluntary torture. After cruel sufferings, the martyr was beheaded. A few biographical details about St. George of Atskuri have been preserved in the writings of the famous 10th century Georgian hagiographers George Merciule and Basil of Zarzma. St. George of Atskuri lived at the end of the 9th and the beginning of the 10th centuries, a member of the aristocratic and pious Shuart-Kelly family. St. George was raised and educated in the environs of Georgia's renowned Opisa monastery in Clarieti. 4 years after the death of the great feudal lord George Ciorcianelli, St. George succeeded him as ruler of the Samtski region. At that time, a bitter conflict arose over who was the rightful heir to Ciorcianelli's inheritance. While serving as the chief political leader of Samtski, St. George also directed the region's spiritual life, wisely administering the ancient Atskuri diocese for many years. According to tradition, the diocese of Atskuri was founded by the holy apostle Andrew the First Called, who left there the not made by hands icon of the Most Holy Theotokos, known as the Atskuri icon of the Mother of God, as an offering to the Georgian Church. Though his literary works have not been preserved, St. George is also commemorated as a great writer of the Church. In his book, The Life of St. Grigol of Kandsta, St. George Mercule notes that St. George of Atskuri made some of the most significant contributions to the biographical writings on St. Grigol of Kandsta. St. George of Atskuri was a close companion of St. Serapion of Zarzma. He was present at his burial and contributed much to the hagiographical writings on his life and works.